Welcome to Outside the Ring. I am here with my guest, Bubba Mackenzie.
Ooh,
So, what got you into this world of professional wrestling?
that's a great question, Matt. I grew up, my brother and I, definitely fans of wrestling, mostly WWF. We were definitely Hulkamaniacs. My dad would take us to see shows at Cobo Hall and Joe Louis Arena. Some of my earliest memories would be seeing like Roddy Piper taking on Hulk Hogan, and then when Paul Orndorff made the turn, seeing Paul Orndorff, Hillbilly Jim, Jake the Snake Roberts, them kind of guys.
Hmm.
Um, so definitely grew up during that whole era. Probably fell out of love with wrestling as I got older, got more into music and stuff like that. Probably as into my teens, and probably around my last year of high school, I started kind of watching more smaller independent show. There was a bunch of stuff on TV. You could get Smoky Mountain, you could get uh Lawler's show, the Memphis show. I can't remember what it was called. USWA. You could get USWA. There was a promotion called All Star Wrestling, and then some of the local shows were popping up on some of the local TV channels back then. They were before the internet, so like Channel 38 and stuff like that had small independent shows. I was working at a record store at the time called Hot Hits. I worked there for many years in Roseville, Michigan, and the original manager was a guy named Alex, and he was the first manager of a group called Insane Clown Posse. So started hanging around with those guys probably when I was around 16 years old or so, and I don't know if you know or not, but those guys are both involved in wrestling, especially Violent J was known as Corporal Daryl Daniels, was wrestling on the independent scene around here. And I finally was like, I was kind of a big guy, not super athletic, but always really into entertaining. And it was like, hey, do you know how I could get started in this? And it just so happened that the Insane Clown Posse, their home base, they had a warehouse out in Novi. And a gentleman named Denny Cass, Dennis Kasperwitz, but Denny Cass, he was the second generation of the Fabulous Kangaroos, used to team with Al Snow. He was a local wrestling trainer around here and a wrestling coach at University of Michigan Dearborn. He famously trained Rhino and Briar Wellington and a few other students. And he was setting up basically at their warehouse, and they arranged for me and a friend of mine to start getting trained by Denny Cass. So that's how I got into it. That was the short end of it. We tried kind of breaking in, doing these before that, they were throwing these kind of big, like glorified backyard shows before we knew what we were doing. And like, I don't know if you know who, the Rude Boy, of course, Detroit legend. He was part of that group. He was the first person that ever showed me how to take a suplex, how to take a flat back bump. So I owe a lot to him as well. Because really, he's the first person to ever introduce me to wrestling. Him and the guys in ICP. So that's how I got my start, man.
How'd you get the ring name Bubba Mackenzie?
Well, I've been Bubba my whole life, essentially since I've been 2 years old. It's been just my childhood nickname, and when we started, I was just trying to find a name, and Mackenzie always stuck out to me. I'm a huge fan of an old Canadian sketch TV show called SCTV. And there, of course, you may have seen a movie called Strange Brew with Bob and Doug McKenzie, Dave Thomas, and Rick Moranis. They play the McKenzie brothers, kind of a stick at kind of backwoods Canadian beer drinking guys. And I always thought that was great. I was a huge fan of the Bob and Doug McKenzie album as a kid, and I just always thought the name McKenzie was cool. And when I first made my debut, I was from the backwoods of northern Canada, and almost it was like a kind of a I don't know what I thought I was doing, but it was sort of a lumberjack style gimmick, if you will. Didn't last very long.
Did you start because I seen you go or you wrestled in LPW alongside Movado and the then D-Ray 3000. Did you start wrestling under a mask or did that
No,
come later on?
yeah, that happened later on. When I first came up, no mask. Um, Probably after my first year or so is when I start teaming with my brother. We didn't wear masks for the first few years of really getting into it. Starting to do indie shows and things like that.
Hmm.
Um, and somewhere around, trying to think, we had started doing a lot of hardcore matches. You know, we had a pretty infamous hardcore match with Necro Butcher, Madman Pondo at St. Andrews Hall. That was also had Cash Flow and Corporal Robinson involved in it, and it was light tubes and barbed wire and blood everywhere. And we were start kind of that was the hot thing at that time. In the late '90s, hardcore wrestling, and so
Hmm.
we were kind of that was kind of our niche too. We were doing a lot of these hardcore matches, and it was just kind of like, hey, maybe we don't have to like get torn to shreds if we could come up with a gimmick that maybe was more entertaining, that could connect with more people, be more, and I don't know if the term was marketable, but be more universally, acceptable. Like when you're just constantly bleeding all over the place, nothing wrong with that. Respects all the deathmatch guys out there, and I,
Yeah.
again, we did it for a long time, so
Mhm.
not trying to disparage what's the current deathmatch scene or fans of deathmatch wrestling, but we just saw more longevity and trying to be more old school entertainment about things. And at the time, no one was really wearing masks, and our initial masks were a definite throwback to like you could definitely you knew who it was. It was very intentional. Like they left a lot of our face exposed, and there was no question. Like we weren't copping to it, but right, like everybody knew who it was. And then
Yeah.
that just kind of evolved. We started getting different masks, getting different things made. At one point, we had done some shows with LA Park, had done some shows with us, and he saw the masks that we had. And like the next time he came to town, he had masks made for us by the guy that makes his masks, like.
Hmm.
So and then we just started, hey man, I sat down and kind of reworked the design and redrew like the more sinister kind of the more famous bump and ugly, upside down star kind of a thing, with like horns or whatever it was. We just wanted cool masks that were animated, that were
Oh yeah.
when you moved, it aided in the motion of things, right?
Mhm.
Like, and so that was the thought behind that. And yeah, we just really never looked back from that point until I actually retired. But yeah, from that point, we were old school about it. We wore the mask into the building, all through the towns after the show, all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, many people that wear masks are very protective of their identities under the mask.
yeah, yeah, for
Like
sure.
a Rey Mysterio, you'll see him walking through with his mask.
Yeah, and I can remember when WCW had him take his mask off, and it
Hmm.
was just so. It was you know weird. It
Yeah.
was just knowing that culture,
Hmm.
you know, through the promotion of our Revolution shows and working more and more with the Lucha guys, we got to work a lot of these shows and see how that the Lucha Libre is it's not just a style of wrestling, it's a culture, like both
Hmm.
in the locker room and in the fans, like, and
Oh
it's a
yeah.
it's a whole it's a whole thing, man. And like we embrace that wholeheartedly. So it was like we saw exactly how these guys were behaving, and it was like, all right, well, that's how we're going to do it too. Like, we were always nice to fans, and that was never a problem. But it
Hmm.
was like, all right, well, we're going to wear the mask, and we're going to, be respectful and protect that, and just part of the whole thing. Live the
Cool.
gimmick, as they say, Mav.
Um, how long did you wrestle for?
Let's see. I started roughly 1995 through probably 2013. So what's that? 15 something, some odd years, 16, 17. I came back to work with XICW. I was approached by them. My good friend Brian Gorey, DBA. DBA's dad Malcolm Monroe Sr. is the first wrestling promoter that ever booked me and gave me a paycheck. Gave me a real opportunity and a real show.
Yeah.
So I go back with the Monroe family to the beginning of my career, and they had this idea about the Drunk the Clown character, and I had at the time I'd actually been doing. I was one of the many independent Doink the Clowns on the independent scene to make some extra money, and in fact, often there would be shows where it would be double duty, like Doink the Clown would wrestle, and then the Bumpin' Uglies would also wrestle, like kind of a thing. Uh, and yeah, that was they had contacted me about this idea about the Drunk the Clown character, which was just a fun take on Doink the Clown, and so I kind of came out of semi-retirement for them, probably for maybe 2 years, just wrestling once a month and
Yeah.
taking it easy. But the injuries and everything started catching up with me, and I was at the time I was refereeing MMA and kickboxing shows, and that was taking just more and more of my time between
Well,
training jujitsu and refereeing shows. It was I was making more money doing that, and
yeah.
it was at that time just taking more of my focus away. So, and then I started, just problems with my hips and my knees and stuff like that. It was just time to step away from wrestling. It just wasn't as fun
Yeah.
for me for a bit. So I just stepped away. Never, like the Godfather. I tried to leave, Mav, but they keep bringing me back in. But you never retire. But
Mhm.
I'm definitely at this point in the game at 100% retired from in-ring action. But I'm having a great time doing ring announcing and commentary and things like that. So I still try to stay active and poke my nose around and hope to be of some positive contribution to the sport and art that I love so much, that has given me so much. So
Absolutely.
Mav, tell me
Yeah.
about you, buddy. What's going on with this open heart surgery? Let's tell the world your story, man. Let's get a little bit of this out. Come on.
Well, they'll be able to hear my story because some people up Fox 2 News
Hey,
reached out and I was able to tell my story. That's coming up real soon.
that's
Uh,
great, buddy.
by the time this is being recorded, it's going to be up sometime tomorrow, from what I was told.
So keep your eye open, everybody. The Fox 2
Mhm.
Detroit News website for a whole story on what's going on with Mav, this incredible young man right here. I'm so honored to be a part of your show right now, buddy. I really am.
Ooh. And what got you into wanting to transition over to like commentary work and ring announcing?
Well, I had pretty much stepped away from it completely for some time, to be honest. I was having a lot of trouble with my hip. I was in a bad state for probably 2 or 3 years and could barely move. I was nearly crippled, and it was affecting my mental health as well. I'm sure you can relate to that, how your mental health can be affected when you have physical stuff going on, and just not in a place to do it. I was playing a lot of music also.
Hmm.
My hip had deteriorated to the point that I had to step away from refereeing because it was hard for me to
Get down.
get down and up and to move laterally. You know what I mean, and to
Hmm.
stay out of the way efficiently, and to make, you know what I mean. That's professional wrestling refereeing is serious business. Don't get me wrong. The
Hmm.
referee is as important as the people in the match. But when we're talking about fighting, it's literally life or death, and you can't.
Hmm.
If you're in a position where you can't move the way that you need to move, then you're putting fighters at risk, and I couldn't do that with a good conscience. So I stepped away from that for a little bit, but about a year and a half ago, I was able to get my hip replaced, luckily, and I had a great doctor and a great team, and most importantly, a great family. My wife and my kids here were set up, made it so that I could get my hip replaced. I had a great support system, and I'm moving again. And during that time, I had actually ran into, just before I got my hip replaced, I had ran into my friend Dickie Bronson, who is one of the promoters as well as one of the stars of Sanctuary Fight Club, and also a big part of the Lucha Boom promotion.
Hmm.
And just we've been friends for 20 years. I know him from Hot Hits Records, and um, he had mentioned the idea, hey man, have you ever thought about doing commentary? And it's funny because all through the pandemic and things like that, my wife and I were watching AEW, Ring of Honor, and and I would say things like, maybe I could get back into wrestling in some other way. Like I can't take bumps, but maybe there's somewhere backstage or commentary, or and when we were promoting Revolution and the Independent Wrestling Revolution, we had DVD deals with both Smart Mark and Big Vision Productions and Mass Republic. And we did our own commentary under different just pseudonames, but my brother and I did the commentary for all those, as well as the Squared Circle Reviews commentary. So it's been something that I'd done a bunch anyways.
Yeah.
And excuse me as I get a delicious seltzer water here. Um, but and he offered me, hey man, we have this great Lucha Boom show coming up, and we'd love to have you come. He's like, I know you'd be the man for the job, and he had enough faith in me. It really kind of kicked me in the butt. I was kind of in a bad place, and so shout out to Dickie Bronson. I love you, buddy. That probably sounded terrible when I just hit that microphone. I apologize, but yeah. So and my friends over at Sanctuary Fight Club, DC Howe, lead ref Rick Vivian. Just all the great people. I mean, I can go on and on and on. The promotion just feels like home. And yeah, it was a live telecast. The first time I'd ever done that, for a live internet pay-per-view stream, and I handled it well. Had a partner I didn't know that didn't really know wrestling very well, and we had a great rapport. We were able to get through it, and then I started right away commentating the Sanctuary Fight Club shows. And then I've done work on a few other independent shows here and there, and I've done some ring announcing. I'm currently doing the ring announcing and hosting for Sanctuary Fight Club as well, as ring announcing. And we got some exciting announcements coming up very soon, so stay tuned to Sanctuary Fight Club. Keep your eyes open on all your social media. Sanctuary Fight Club. There's gonna be some big announcements regarding both the Fight Club and Lucha Boom. Everybody, I promise you're gonna be super stoked.
Pay attention.
Yeah.
Is there anyone independent independently you wish you could have had a match with?
Oh man, you know, wow, that's a good question, Mav. I mean, yeah, of course, there's a few people, but when I look back at the amount of wrestlers that my brother and I grew up worshiping as a kid, gotten to work with, Demolition, the Midnight Express, the Powers of Pain, the Head Shrinkers, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Jake the Snake Roberts, um, Kamala. I got to tag team with Kamala. I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
these are things that I definitely cherish forever. Tracy Smothers, through we working with JCW, we got to work with some great talent in JCW, and I got to team with with Tracy Smothers and Mickey Knuckles. Um, there's a ton of guys I would have loved. We've never, I've never had a match with Sabu involved, and that would have been cool because he's probably one of my favorite people in all of wrestling. He's from a generation that's nearly lost now, and
Hmm.
everything that Sabu has given to wrestling, I can't understate it enough. And we never got to actually work a match or angle with Sabu. That would have been cool.
Hmm.
We've gotten to do stuff with Rhino. Oh man,
Yeah.
probably to some guys that I would like another chance to do stuff with the great Yukon Braxton or Stevie Lee or some of the great talent that we had in this area that have passed away maybe too soon. That's who I would most want to wrestle again if I had
Yeah.
a choice.
Hmm. Who would you say were some of the toughest opponents you faced?
Madman Pondo, for sure. The Necro Butcher, you can't understate. The Christ Brothers, they were the Ring Riders in JCW. We had epic battles with the Scarboni brothers. the Wild Stallions. Um, when you start talking about lucha, like guys like L.A. Park, Blue Demon Jr. Like everyone that gets in the ring is tough, man.
Yeah.
Uh, but those, probably some of those early hardcore matches, Corporal Robinson, Cash Flow, them guys, those early hardcore battles in that era were probably definitely those guys are some of the toughest guys I've ever known. You could run some of those guys over with cars, man, and they'd still keep coming. So
Yeah.
probably some of those guys.
Hmm. Going back to the hardcore wrestling, like names of Madman Pondo and what was it? But you aren't the only one to bring up those as tough individuals to face in the ring. I've had many wrestlers on here, and many have been doing it for years, and many have been doing it or started out with the hardcore, like with Madman Pondo.
Yeah, well, I mean, here we are, 2025, and Pondo's still doing it. So if that ain't tough,
Oh.
you know what I mean? Like I can't,
Mhm.
I can't, I can't do it anymore. But he can. So but there's you want to talk about or talking about legitimate tough guys. So maybe guys that I haven't been in matches per se, but that I've been involved with for many years. Let's
Mhm.
give our due to the Motor City Machine Guns, Chris Sabin, Alex Shelley. These are two guys. They're over the age of 40 now. You wouldn't believe it by looking at them because every time I see them, they look like they're in their 20s,
Oh,
and they're living proof, Mav, that if you take care of yourself, live clean, work out, what I mean, do the right things, somehow it works.
yeah.
But these guys have been through the ringer. I mean, surgery after injury, working at a crazy style that completely revolutionized and innovated. They're the first thing to come along and change wrestling, in my opinion, in 20 years. And here they are finally getting their due after all these years, still able to work at that top level.
Mhm.
Guys like amazing Nate Matson still out here working, like, at a top level, still able to come up to the House of Truth, work practice matches with students, taking bumps where he doesn't need to take bumps.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, there's a lot of guys that haven't really got their due until late, and they've been doing this a long time, and it's not easy on your body, buddy. So, and
Oh,
you got to be just as tough mentally as you do physically and anything, because it's a lot of build ups, letdowns, emotional roller coaster, wrestling, just like the goal of the match is to put the fans on an emotional roller coaster, right? But participating and trying to become successful in wrestling is an emotional roller coaster in and of itself, if that makes sense.
mhm. And what can draw fans with the matches is like the anticipation of what's going to happen next, who's going to hit this next move, who's going to come out on top, this and that.
And it's all about the connection. In order for any of those things to really matter, in order for the fans to care about who's coming next, or right, they
Hmm.
need to care. They need to care about the performer, and to
Ooh.
care about someone, you need to have an emotional connection, one way or another. Could be like, dislike, right? But
Yeah.
the greatest wrestlers, the ones who have historically been the biggest stars, the ones that that are a step above, the mid card, the people that are at the top of the card, they get that you have to connect with these people in order for them to care. And when they care about you, you got them. They will follow you, they will support you. If you're a heel, they will hate you, but they'll still follow you around because they want to see the baby face beat you up.
Yeah.
It's wrestling fans are the most loyal fans in the world if you can connect with them, and they can smell BS from 100 miles away. And what's nice now is, the era of kayfabe is it's completely gone. It was maybe an air of it still around when we first started in the 90s, but
Mhm.
since then it's gone. And wrestling fans are educated, so
Yeah.
they know that it's predetermined. Or I hate that F word. I'm not going to use the F word,
Hmm.
but they know that wrestling's predetermined, right?
Yeah.
But they also don't want to be like, they don't want to have that thrown in their face. They want to believe, just like in a
Hmm.
movie. You want to
Oh,
believe that,
absolutely.
right? You want to be invested in what's happening is real. And the more that you are, the more that what happens is impactful, right?
Hmm.
So that's the whole thing. To me, that's what I try to nail into young wrestlers is, sell, 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 connect, connect, connect,
Yeah.
connect, 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 connect with the fans at all times.
Yeah. Face, you'll get cheered. Heels, the fans will boo you and talk crap to you and or about you just to take a dig, which helps.
Well, the better you are at it, the more they will, right? That's
Oh.
the goal. That's the goal. But the wrestling fans also are educated now, so they don't want to be. There's an insider term. I don't know if anyone's told you, called cheap heat. Which is, there's a lot of varieties of cheap heat. Cussing, um, making fun of the home sports team.
Mhm.
Calling the guy in the front row's wife fat. Like all that stuff is cheap heat, and sometimes it works. But once you get in really into the spirit of professional wrestling, getting to manipulate them either through what you're doing in the ring physically, or you know what I mean, or emotionally, that's like a little above that. That's when wrestling becomes great.
Mhm.
Like that's when you start telling stories and getting, having epic moments in wrestling. And that's what I think what every wrestler is really trying to out there is they want to give these, be a part of epic moments. Like you want to be a part of a moment that a fan will remember forever. That's the ultimate goal. Besides making a lot of money. Making a lot of money is the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
But besides that, you want to have memorable moments. It's
Hmm.
not even matches. It's not who you wrestled. You want to have memorable moments.
Hmm. And talking about wrestling fans being educated now, back then, like the 70s, 80s, 90s, we didn't have like all this social media, all these news outlets and the internet to tell us or to inform people of
Yeah,
what's going on and everything.
you're not lying about that. When we first started, the closest thing that there was to that were newsletters,
Hmm.
or now some people call them the dirt sheets. There
Hmm.
was, of course, Dave Meltzer's has been around forever, but there was a few different local ones. I believe Brian Gorey had one for a long time when he was just a teenager, and
Hmm.
we had a thing in Detroit called the 438s, and it started off as Michigan Bell, then it was American Bell, then it was Ameritech, but it was the local phone company. And you could set up, if you had a landline, you could set up a free voicemail service, right?
Hmm.
And the phone number was always 1-313-438, and then whatever the four numbers were, right?
Hmm.
And on this voicemail service, you could say you could have, they would, I forget what they would call them, but you could departmentalize, right? You could leave like three or four separate messages up to a half hour each, right? So, and then it would go beep, and then you could leave a message, right?
Hmm.
So wrestling journalists and fans all over the city, Brian Gorey's most famously, and my great friend, the late Ron Showtime, he had one as well, the Pro Wrestling Revolution. And in fact, that's who we partnered with to start the Independent Wrestling Revolution. But they were all these great 438 hosts. And that was literally how the news of independence, at least in the Detroit area, spread, was through these hotlines. And if you lived in Detroit or in the 313 area code, the call was free. If
Hmm.
you lived outside, it was like a long, whatever the long distance charges were.
Yeah.
But you could call, listen to option one, and that might be Brian Gorey's report, blah, 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 right?
Hmm.
And then Then it's going to be Bulgatti's. Bulgari, our good friend Lee, Bulgari had one. Option two, you could hit, you know?
Hmm.
And then if you had any questions or whatever, and oftentimes they would do giveaways, they would do announcements for shows, you know, and this is how you found out about shows. And certain comic book shops would have the posters for shows. They would sell tickets. When we started running our own shows, Hot Hits Records became our home base. We sold the tickets there. We had all the posters, you know, and it was just a very DIY, old school. You know, the internet had just come out after we had already started promoting, and the closest thing that to social media was these message boards and forums that were just totally toxic outlets for wrestling fans to come on and just call each other foul names and talk smack about wrestling and be just general internet trolls like we know exist today. So,
Hmm. Um, do you have a list of favorite matches or moments from your career?
uh, definitely. I don't know if I have a list, but definitely had some.
Some, yeah.
Yeah, you know, the first brawl at the hall was the first time we promoted a big club show on our own, and we probably had 1,000 people at St. Andrews Hall with a DIY production. You know, all you know, this as punk rock as can be. That was pretty huge. A couple years later, we had a great cage match with the Wild Stallions at St. Andrews Hall.
Mhm.
The first Revolution shows where we had like El Hijo del Santo in LA Park and Rey Mysterio Jr. I'm sorry, Rey Mysterio Sr. Pardon me.
Mhm.
Dr. Wagner Jr. Black Tiger, who was also Silver King, right? Those are incredible moments. The Ultimo Dragon coming in for us. Matches, you know, Wrestling Demolition was a huge one. Getting to do spots with Jake Roberts and Hacksaw, yeah, because that was like childhood here. Like you know, you can't believe you're in here working with guys you grew up watching on TV. You know, um, the match where I retired and took my mask off was pretty emotional versus DBA and Jamie Cox for me because it was kind of it was bittersweet. I was willingly walking away from wrestling, but it still hurt. If that makes any, you know, it hurt more than I thought it would hurt. Right, you
Yeah.
know. I was completely ready to do it. I was completely done with wrestling, but that moment, you know, in there with great friends that I've known for so long, it definitely kind of hit me, you know, like I didn't know if I was making the right move or not. And then um yeah, and just you know, we got getting to do TV. We've you know, did America's Got Talent. We were featured on that show. We did Man versus Food on the Travel Channel, the Jerry Springer Show. You know, been featured on the Travel Channel.
Mhm.
So stuff like that is incredible. You know, getting to work alongside such big names and stars that you know people we grew up idolizing and big names in the business, and still you know being able to get the respect and love from the fans and the wrestlers today. That's probably my favorite thing. One of my favorite things is being able to walk into the House of Truth and you know the students and the young wrestlers that are there. You know they're right there to show you love, and you know they're eager to learn. And like my lifelong friends like Truth Martini, you know, up there, you know, still able to contribute, give something back to this business, you know, just three. That's something I cherish and hope to be able to continue to do.
Oh, and that's all I had for you. Thank you for your time.
Mav, listen, my friend, this has been a great interview. You did a great job. I look forward to working with you in the future. That's a promise, brother. Me and you are gonna tag team some shows in the future. Got it?
You got it.
All right. Everybody listen outside the ring with my man, Mav.
You have a good night.
You too, my friend. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.